Welcome to Into the Words, a podcast from the Highlights Foundation Retreat Center. Today in the cabin is our dear friend, Tiffany Jackson. Welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you for having me.
We're so glad to have you here at Summer Camp Mentorship this week. It's a real treat. Tell us a little bit about your experience here so far.
Well, so far, for one, I don't usually do summer camps. Like as soon as I saw, your emails and stuff, I was like, wait, are we intense? And I've never been here to highlight. So this has been such an amazing experience. It's so peaceful here and calm, great energy. The food is amazing. So I'm just like, I'm all over it. I'm loving it here.
Well, thank you. We're so glad that you came. And I know you're doing a couple of different talks as well as your mentoring. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about at least one of your talks to give a little flavor of what you're talking about.
Sure. So I am doing a workshop called Plot Like a Film. And I basically sort of translate Sid Field, who is this iconic screenwriting guru, his 3-act paradigm. And I translate it into basically the book world. And I sort of compare and contrast how like every movie, every TV show has some type of 3-act structure, which in our world would be beginning, middle, and end. And so I sort of break it down in somewhat of a chart in his paradigm chart to the mentees and sort of explain how you have a plot point in Act 1, you have a midpoint in Act 2, and you have another plot point in Act 2, and then you have the end, which is Act 3, and what sort of goes into each of those acts. And the reason why I do this is because it helps people, particularly our mentees, who are trying to really sort of plot out their books and make sure they have all the necessary elements in order to keep the story going. Mm-hmm. And it also helps them to sort of see how their story sort of like stretches out and where they need to punch up the tension, or maybe they need to escalate things, or maybe their big escalation isn't big enough. And so seeing it in a very simplistic way, particularly in like a screenwriter way, really helps them sort of change and know what they actually have to do later on.
So are they almost mapping this on a single sheet of paper?
Yes.
In the lesson?
In the lesson, yes.
Oh, wow, okay.
So the first thing I do is I ask them to try to do it with maybe a movie that they know. And I say, like, identify each of the plot points, identify the midpoint of the movie, and identify the climax. So some students did Everything by Nicola Yoon. Some students did Moonlight with a Cher. Like, they were just kind of like, okay, so the midpoint in that movie would be here. And if you can line out exactly where plot points and midpoints are in a movie, you would know how to identify that in your own work.
Right. And it sounds like that's a great entry to start with a movie you know.
Yes.
Safer before you dive into your own work.
Yeah.
You know. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. So you teach that class, mm-hmm. because I read in your background that you are a filmmaker. You come from the film perspective.
I have been in working in television film for the past 15 years. But even before that, I was a film student in high school, college, and in grad school. So I've just sort of had this kind of knowledge of film and how it works, since I was 14. And even though I'm now a full-time writer, basically film is just another medium of storytelling. And it all sort of translates at the end of the day. There's visual and then there's, words. Words are so important.
So, and I guess that was my question. How did you get from one to the other?
I think I have always wanted to be a writer. Ever since I was 4 years old, but I didn't know exactly how to tell the story and how to fill in all the nooks and crannies and how to make my words really pop and shine. So it took some practice. It took some years and years of reading and just practicing and writing almost every day. I mean, I tell people during my 15 years as working in television, I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to just write. I was let me just write. And that way, later on, when I have to deal with budgets or I'm on set, I at least know that I got some words in for the day. So the transition, while it seems kind of weird, it was actually pretty fluid because I was coming from a sort of scripted television background and then going into just making my own creative projects. So that's actually been sort of a fun part of this. It's sort of like seeing both sides of the coin in any type of like creative medium.
So how has so now you call yourself a writer.
Yeah.
You no longer say I'm in TV and film. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How has that changed your writing practice? Are you still a daily writer?
I am a daily writer. I feel like I'm constantly on deadline. I don't get up as early anymore. I do tend to get up and I do maybe like, stretching or I'm, cooking or something like that. I go to an office space. I finally rented a little office space for myself because I get really distracted at home more than I ever thought I would. And also definitely doing more traveling on an everyday basis, talking in schools, talking with students, talking with mentees. So it's definitely changed my writing practice. It can be hard to sort of focus, but it's also like what I love to do. Like I love talking about story making and I love talking about I love helping people at this juncture in their career specifically. Because I was at that juncture for such a long time. And so I know sort of the key points of like, you're almost there, just keep going. Like it's just something about, for me, it's one of my biggest joys, like helping other people. So like that's why this whole summer camp has been such like an amazing, like, yay for me, like in a lot of ways.
Because of that interaction.
Yeah.
And I think this morning when Tracy Chi was speaking, it was a good perspective where she talked about there's the writer and then there's the publishing world. Mm-hmm. And as you're talking about this, like you have to now manage an entire business around being a writer.
Yeah.
And so in addition to writing practice, you have so many other pieces to manage.
Yeah, it's definitely a different beast when you are your own business. Because before I was always working for someone. So I knew a paycheck was coming. I wasn't 100% like married to any of my projects because, it's not my vision, it's not my baby. It's more or less getting someone else's baby on the screen. Versus now I have so much more pressure in the sense of like, everything is on me. Like my paycheck I'm solely responsible for if my paycheck comes or not. I have to pay my own insurance. I have to just manage so many other buckets. But in a way, it also has made me more responsible because before I was just sort of cruising. I was on autopilot in a lot of ways. This time I have to be way more alert and assertive and taking the bull by the horns and making sure, but then also being protective of my own creative energy. Which is something that Tracy was talking about as well, too. And just being forthright and being true to yourself in a lot of ways, too.
So for listeners who may not know about what you write, tell us a little bit about your books and your genre or your favorite styles.
Sure. So I have about 3 books right now. And they're all in the thriller type mystery genre. My first book was called Allegedly. My second book is called Monday's Not Coming. And my third book is called Let Me Hear a Rhyme. And both Allegedly and Monday's Not Coming were loosely inspired by real cases that I turned into somewhat thriller novels. And Let Me Hear a Rhyme was solely just a creative work, which is great. And it's great to just kind of show my range as well, too. Like, I can write very hard-hitting novels, but I can also be funny. And that's one of the best things about being in this, like, industry is, like, you can play around and try different things as well, too. But I'm more or less attracted more to, like, dark kind of, like, thrillers, scary, spooky stories as well, too.
Monday's Not Coming was definitely spooky. It was a real page turner. Thank you for that book.
Thank you.
Tell me, let's see, as we think about, I like that idea that you've been able to do different styles then. Mm-hmm. And what was it like with the Allegedly and Monday's Not Coming? Because those I don't know if dark is the word you want to use, but was that emotionally heavy for you as you're writing? Do you have to take breaks in between?
Yeah,
How do you-
and that's actually one of the reasons why I wrote Let Me Hear a Rhyme, was to take a break. Because both books are incredibly emotionally heavy. Because I am dealing with some really tough topics. And it definitely weighs on me a lot because I'm very diligent. I want to make sure that the story is as accurate as possible. So I do a lot of research. And so I dive almost into, like, I call myself like a method author. Like, I'm diving into the world of my characters. And from that perspective, then I sort of exhaust myself. And it can be very hard to climb out of that sometimes. I eat a lot of cookies and will randomly watch Twilight or stream like all like the holiday movies on like Hallmark Channel and stuff like that. They have like a gazillion in order to sort of maintain somewhat of my own like sanity. Which is one of the reasons why I loved writing a book like Let Me Hear a Rhyme, because it was outside of what I normally do. But it also gave me a chance to just be fun and funny and kind of loosen up and talk about music. And that, too, was a book that was a historical fiction, because this book takes place in 1998, and that is considered historical fiction. We are old. So
I was gonna say, I think I graduated college in 1998.
So I think it was great to sort of just, you don't want to be pigeonholed as like an author who only has one range, who can only sing on one octave. Like, you want to be like sort of like a unicorn in a sense. You want to be the Beyonce, who's able to just do anything. Like, you want to be able to kind of branch off into different like genres and lanes and still like rock out in those lanes as well too.
So you're passionate about a wide variety.
I am. I'm passionate. I mean, at the end of the day, I want people to know me as a good writer. Like, no matter the challenge, no matter the story structure, no matter the subject, that I was a good writer at the end of the day.
That's how I know you. Well, thank you so much, Tiffany Jackson, for joining us in Into the Words at the Highlights Foundation Retreat Center. We are dedicated to continuing our 35-year history of providing the space, the conversations, and the nurturing that goes into making great stories for children. So thank you for being a part of that with us here at the Highlights Foundation. But more importantly, thank you for all you are doing to support that belief that children are the world's most important people.
Thank you for having me. That was amazing.